Hi, Dave with Smart Trucking here. I've been thinking about this Humboldt accident and the trial. I'm sure all Canadians have. April 6th, there was a tragic accident where a busload of young hockey players slammed into the side of a semi, a transport truck, uh, killed 16, 13 were badly injured, and the truck driver was at fault. So I've been trying to follow this because it's just been a devastating thing for all Canadians. So I've been following this because I'm thinking, what's going to happen to this truck driver now? What's going to happen to these families? How is this all going to play out? And I don't really know how I wish it would play out. I'm not sure what's going to be justified in the eyes of the court and what's not. I just don't know what to think about this whole thing. And I can't imagine, just as a bystander 2,000 miles away, I can't imagine what these families of these young hockey players are thinking. So I really don't know where to go with this. So I thought I'd talk about it. Maybe I'll feel a little better afterwards. But April 6th was the date of this tragic accident. July 6th, 3 months later, they finally got around to charging the truck driver. And I was annoyed with that because really, it was pretty obvious what happened when anybody with any experience looked at the accident scene. They could tell right away what had happened and whose fault it was. So then you start thinking about, well, what's going to be the just thing to do here? How are we going to handle this as Canadians? How's the court system going to handle this? So the first trial date was to be August 21st. So August 21st, I was sitting there prepared to follow the trial via internet. And I wanted to see how the whole thing played out. I don't know how I want it to play out, but I want to see how the court handles it, basically. August 21st, they adjourned the trial till October 2nd. October 2nd, they adjourned the trial until October 23rd. October 23rd, they adjourned the trial until November 27th, which was yesterday. So again, yesterday, I'm thinking, well, finally, let's make some progress here. So then now they've adjourned it to December 18th. And we all know it's not going to go December 18th just because it's too close to Christmas. And I'm starting to think, what the hell is going on here? Like, why is this taking so long? Why are they dragging this out? At first, the lawyer for the truck driver, Sadu, said, well, he hadn't had enough time to review all the information. I find it a little tough to believe a case of this magnitude, and a couple of months wasn't enough time to go over all the information that he had. Okay, let's accept that. But now the thing has been delayed or adjourned or remanded or whatever the term is you want to use 4 times, and it'll be adjourned a 5th time because it won't go to court at Christmas time. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? What are we doing? And I'm starting to think, well, I wonder if they're trying to negotiate a plea bargain with this guy. I wonder if Sadu's lawyer is going back and forth with the Crown, trying to come up with a plea bargain arrangement for Sadu. And I'm thinking, I almost hope that's not the case because Canada has a bad history when it comes to trials and plea deals. Like look at the plea deal that Carla Homolka got out of our legal system. God, she was guilty of murder and they let her walk free. Look at Omar Khadr. Omar Khadr killed a guy. We apologized to him and gave him $10.5 million. So there's not necessarily any justice in a plea agreement here in Canada. So now I'm wondering, well, is this what they're negotiating for Sadu? And I kind of hope it's not, because we have a tendency here in Canada to go a little bit light. I don't know if in this case it's justified. Yes, the guy was a new Canadian, and yes, he just got his license. Actually, he wasn't even a new Canadian. He wasn't a Canadian at all. He was from India. He hadn't immigrated to Canada yet. So what's the right thing to do here? Do you cut him some slack there because he'd only had his license for a couple of weeks and didn't really understand the responsibilities that he had or the job that he had, or, I don't know. I don't know what the fair thing to do is. And then I think, well, what would the families want here? What would satisfy the families? Could you even satisfy the families as to what they think is just? And Kathy and I have a son, and I tried to imagine what would I feel if this were me in this position. I'm not sure I'd ever think that any sort of sentencing was adequate enough. I'd just be so grief stricken. I'd never be able to forget it. So I don't know what the right answer is for this guy. I don't know, but I want the system to move on. I want to see what the justice system is going to do here. I want to see what the justice system is going to do for these families. Now, as a truck driver, all truck drivers should be interested in this case because it's going to affect us in one way or another. It looks like it's probably a case of distracted driving and negligence on Sidhu's part. So I want to see how the court handles that, because it'll be a landmark decision for future cases that will come up like this. And there's going to be more of them because everybody's on the cell phone these days. And I'm betting Sidhu was on the cell phone. So I want to see how the court system handles that. As truck drivers, we should be interested in the outcome of this trial. As Canadians, we should be interested in the outcome of this trial. Here's a horrendous accident. And let me say this. There's no doubt it was an accident. Nobody planned anything like this. It was a tragic accident. And you've got to have some sympathy for Sidhu in this case, because he didn't do this on purpose. It's been a horrible accident, but he hasn't meant to do it. Now, it's been a preventable accident, and the law and the courts are probably going to look at that fact as well. It was preventable. So what's the right answer here? I don't know, but I expect the court system to figure out what the right answer is, and I expect them to act on it. The penalty for this here is for a death, an accident causing death. He should get a maximum of up to 14 years for every instance that this happened. So 14 of those boys died. He should be susceptible to this conviction of up to 14 years times 14. He injured times 16 victims, 14 years. And he injured another 13, which by law he can get up to 10 years in jail for each one of those incidents. So he's looking potentially at never coming out of the clink again, basically. Are they going to do that to him? Is it even fair to compound the number of deaths with his sentence? I don't know that either. I'm curious to see how the court system handles this. But I can tell you one thing. I want them to get on with this. Let's have some resolution here. There's all sorts of angles. I want to see how they cover it. It's an interesting case. It's a horrific case. It's an awful deal. But there's a lot of legal precedents here that Canada's going to set when they finally hand out a verdict in this trial. And I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know what you guys think of any of this. Let me know, because I think the whole thing is taking far too long to get to trial. I don't know what sort of a sentence we should be satisfied with. I don't know if we should cut this guy some slack because he was so new at this and didn't really understand what a responsibility he had. I don't understand a whole lot of this. I don't understand how a guy that wasn't even a Canadian got a Canadian driver's license, and to pull a set of super Bs, of all things, they couldn't start him out in a UPS van or something like that. They gave him a set of triple Bs. He just walked in with no experience and walked out with a license to haul super Bs. Like, what's wrong with the transportation system and the ministry in Alberta there? They've got a huge amount of responsibility here, and so does the owner of Adesh Trucking for throwing this guy the keys. I think he should be hung out to dry as well here, because he obviously didn't care anything for the responsibilities that he had to protect the driving public. All he wanted to do was make money, just make money. So he threw this guy the keys, didn't train him hardly at all, and just sort of hoped for the best without any thought to anything else. So I think he and the ministry both should be hung out to dry. So I don't know what the answer is. So I'm looking to you guys for input. I honestly don't know what to think on this deal. It's interesting. I noticed too, when I was looking at the pictures of the wreck, and I had a pretty close look at them. I studied them for a while, and that intersection had a flashing stoplight, or a red flashing stoplight over the intersection. And if you look at Sidhu's truck, you'll notice that truck has a drop visor. Now, why a guy with no experience would have a drop visor is beyond me. That shouldn't have been anyway. But it's entirely possible that drop visor blocked his view of that flashing light at the intersection. And the stop sign is low. It's car height. So the hood could have partially blocked the stop sign from his view. But how do you miss both of those when you're coming at it straight on from a couple miles back? You should be able to see this stuff, a mile ahead of you if he'd been looking ahead. And that's what makes me think he wasn't looking ahead at all. He was looking down. He was looking down at his cell phone. So that has yet to be proven in court. But I'm interested to see if that was part of it, because I'm betting it is. I'm betting it's distracted driving, and it'll be curious to see how they handle this whole deal. But I just want to see them move forward, move on with this, and just decide what the heck they're going to do with this guy. And I don't know what the right answer is, but they got to do something. So that's where I am with this right now. I'm disappointed that all these months later, it still hasn't gone to court. They're not releasing any of the findings that they're going into court with. We don't know if he was distracted driving. We don't know when they broke down the ECM and analyzed the ECM, what it had to say. I don't understand the secrecy either, which makes me think that there's skullduggery underfoot here by the court system. And, there's a lot of this stuff we may never know. And I think we have a right to know this. I don't understand why it should be a secret. So I'm curious to see at the end of the day, if we ever see the end of the day, what the answers to all these questions are. We already know the guy had absolutely no training, or poor training, or non-existent training. We already knew that this guy was throwing the keys way too early. And we also already know that this happens thousands of times here in Canada. There's all sorts of highly unqualified drivers on our road. And this is why this is kind of a test case here, because the worst possible scenario has happened now. This guy with no training and no experience, and the heaviest truck allowed on Canadian roads has wiped out a busload of kids. So it's going to be a landmark deal. And provinces like Ontario have already gone to mandatory training now. Alberta, it's kind of like closing the barn doors after the horse is out. Now that all these kids have died, now Alberta's going to do something about it. A little bit late there, Alberta, but so now they're going to bring in forced driver training for these guys. And I'm still not sure that that's even the answer, because when you look at these training programs, that these training schools are running, not one of them commits to a serious amount of hours behind the wheel. It's all classroom time for the most part. You're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for this training too, but not a whole lot of time behind the wheel. And you and I all both know as truck drivers that that's how you learn. You don't learn to drive a truck sitting behind a desk studying a book. Or you don't learn to drive a truck watching a guy up in the front with a pointer and a picture of a highway with a truck tracking down it or something. You learn by driving the thing. And the more you drive, the more you learn. The more practice you get, the better you get. So I don't understand why these training schools aren't held to the fire by saying he's got to have a maximum of, a month behind the wheel, which is how it should be. But this guy had none of that, of course. And here's the result of that. Look at that. Look at the results. And this isn't just one incident. This is the most horrific accident or incident on record to this date. But it's happening every day here in Canada. So you've got to be curious how they're going to solve this problem. And the government kind of sticks their head in the sand or looks the other way or pretends it doesn't happen, or they want to talk about gender equality or something like that. They'll dodge the issue, they'll ignore the issue. But look what's happened here. And they've got to take some responsibility for that too. So I want them to move forward here. And I want to know what you guys think. Am I being too harsh? Am I off base here? Like, what do you guys think about this accident? What do you think should happen to this guy? What do you think his sentence should be? Would they have gone harder on this guy had he been an experienced driver? Will they go lighter on this guy because he had no experience? I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's me spouting off my 2 cents worth, but I'll be curious to see what you guys have to say about this. Take care. Keep the rubber side down.